Hi. Well, what happened between China and U.S. Does really determine a lot, influence a lot, the whole world. Everybody recently talked a lot about the Alaska meeting. So, although it's already some days ago now since the meeting, but it does, really show something new in the Sino-American relationship. So everybody was watching Alaska meeting. And in the Alaska meeting, we could see that the Chinese so-called diplomats acted as what they call it, the warrior wolf, and played tough. And particularly this Yang Jieqi, he talked, he broke the diplomatic protocol, and instead of talking maximum 2 minutes, he talked something like 17 minutes. And a major part of it, he didn't even give time for the interpreter to translate, and just talking in Chinese. And that, of course, actually disclosed his real aim is not to give messages to the American diplomat, the Secretary of State, Blinken, and the National Security Advisor, Sullivan. It is more a show for the Chinese people. It's for me very clear, very clear. And he acted well prepared. He has the whole speech. He probably has learned it in advance. And so some people were thinking, but okay, so now that, like Xi Jinping said, like I mentioned in the last episode, Xi Jinping was saying that East is rising, the East is rising, the West is declining. So now it's time, look like that China is going to, take over America leading role more and more. Well, some Chinese may be cheated by that theory and believe in that. For me, I would say not yet, not yet. But we have to be careful. We have to be careful because the ambition is there. The ambition is to take over the whole world. We must be very clear in mind that this has been their very consequent strategic goal to control everything. So they first started with China, and in order to control China, they killed 80 million Chinese, in peacetime, not in war. They damaged the whole culture of China because the traditional Chinese culture was seen as an obstacle, because in the traditional Chinese culture, such value as being compassionate, being peaceful, being honest are utmost important, and all these are seen by the Chinese Communist Party as something like obstacles for their conquering the world. So, and they have managed by using really both deception and killing inside China, and managed at the end taken the whole 1.4 billion Chinese as their hostage. Now, then they move on. Well, many of the small neighboring countries are already facing the problem, being, so to say, suppressed or controlled by the Chinese communists. I always say Chinese communists, not the Chinese. We have to always separate Chinese Communist Party and the nation China and the Chinese people. It's two different concepts. Now, in the Sino-American relationship, those points of conflict recently are Hong Kong, where the Chinese community did not keep their promise, 50 years no change, and they changed everything. And Taiwan, Taiwan being in reality a sovereign state, so to say, because they have their own government, own system, everything, and is living independently of the mainland, and they want to take it over also. They do it, they basically say it openly, that they want to liberate Taiwan. I mentioned it last time. And And we have also conflict points such as Xinjiang, where America, even under Biden, still criticized China carrying out genocide, yeah, which was actually first claimed by Pompeo during the Donald Trump presidency. And then another conflict point also has to do with human rights, yeah, because in Xinjiang the main problem is the human rights issue, and also Tibetans, yeah, and actually Falun Gong, yeah, they have been persecuting Falun Gongs terribly, killing thousands of them, and many of them became victims of organ harvesting, yeah, and an even bigger conflict point is actually the South China Seas, yeah, and also cyber attacks and all this. But South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait is really a hot pot. I have been mentioning that, I have been pointing out that in many of my episodes. Yeah, we have to be careful because the South China Sea, yeah, stand for actually more than 1/3. I used to say 1/3. Recently I checked it, actually it's 45% of world trade goes through the South China Sea. Now here, in order to formulate a sound strategies against CCP, we have to understand how the CCP people think. And recently I studied a speech made by a Chinese professor called Jin Chanrong. Yeah, he's even the vice president of the Institute for International Relationship Study of International Relationship Study in the Chinese People's University. He's a professor and he's basically quite an important advisor for Xi Jinping and all the other top leaders. Now, I studied a speech by him where he talked about Sino-American relationship, focusing on the South China Sea. I mean, it's a long speech, but he mentioned the whole history. But to sum it up, it's very interesting for me to because he's basically confessing the way he thinks. He looked at the world, I guess, very representative for many Chinese leaders, as if the world, all countries are aggressive, all want to expand, and so what happened in this world is basically determined by who is the stronger one. The stronger one has the right. I think Pompeo mentioned once, yeah, the Chinese Communist Party keep the principle of might is right. Yeah, the one who is the strongest one define what is right and what is wrong. So it was so interesting to see when he described about the South China Sea, was saying, like, for example, in the 50s, China basically had no control over South China Sea. Yeah, it doesn't mean that these islands are not Chinese, but because we didn't have a navy, we didn't have a popular navy. Yeah, and then in the 60s, we managed to make warships of say 500 tons class, so we could manage to start to take those islands closest to the mainland, which is in the Chinese call it the Dongxia, the eastern part of those islands groups. And then he said, well, in the 70s, then we could make even bigger ship, and nowadays we can make ship more than 10,000 tons. Yeah, so basically what he's saying is, now it's time to take the whole, all these islands, in South China Seas, it's full of islands. It's thousands of islands, yeah, or hundreds at least of islands. So now he's saying basically, now we should take the whole, yeah, very openly. So it's interesting. He is basically saying that, the mightiest one has to say, yeah, might is right. So, and that, I think, is important for us to understand what is really going on. And this is why I fully agree with, my friend Elmer Yuan, who I think, who is the first person, at least among the more known person, who started the project to label CCP, Chinese Communist Party, as a transnational criminal organization. Because the way they are doing, it's just like all mafia, all criminal, all gangster group, might is right. So, and they have been using all sorts of deception and tricks to make themselves rich and strong, and stealing technology, getting capital from the West, and to build up. Yeah, I don't think that they did it for the sake of the Chinese people. No, the Chinese people can have a good life as long as they agree or they accept to be their slave, to be obedient, 100% obedient. This is what is going on, and their plan doesn't stop at the border of China. Their plan is by using all sorts of deception, yeah, like this professor Jin Chanrong saying that by increasing our investment in different counties in U.S., yeah, so we can increase our influence, so that we will be able to promote those congressmen and those lawmakers who are, so to say, favorite for us. He was very obvious saying that using financial way and propaganda and media infiltration, we should, make sure that more and more of our people, so to say, people who are sympathizing us, to become politicians in the U.S. So it's actually an open declaration of involving in American election. So, because there is no constraint, no limit for them. They only follow the principle of the end justifies the means. And because Chinese Communist Party is a transnational criminal organization. And only when we understand that this is such an organization can the democratic government all around the world manage to formulate a correct and sound strategy to stop this criminal organization. Thank you for today. And don't forget, click like and subscribe and support us through Patreon or PayPal. Thank you. See you next time.